Assalamu alaikum. Today you will learn about annotation-based configuration in Spring Framework. Before moving on to any of the further topics, please be informed that this is the third tutorial in the series. So if you have not gone through the previous tutorial, please go through the previous tutorial first and then continue with this one. So without any further ado, let's get started. In the last lecture, we have learned about Spring Container and how it manages beans using application context. So let me just walk you through what we did in the last lecture. We have created an object of application context. In this object, we have passed our XML file, configuration.xml. This XML file contains a bean with ID vehicle. So once this context object gets hold of the configuration file, we can simply ask to get us a bean of a specific ID, in this case a vehicle. So it will return that bean. This bean will internally return an object of bike. So once we got an object, we can call any method and we can do the required operations for that object. Now instead of creating beans in XML file, we are going to create bean using annotation. So we have to do some configurations in this. Now in order to use annotation-based configurations, we have to define some properties in the bean tag. Let's go to Google and search for Spring XML for annotation-based configuration. The first link will take you to the Spring website. In here, if you scroll a little bit down, you'll find some configurations. Here, if you notice that it has all the properties that we have in our application. The only difference is that it has two new URLs, which we need to paste it in our XML file. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to copy this complete bean tag from here and paste it in our XML file, like so. Now, since we are using annotation-based configuration to create the beans, we will not require this line over here. So I'm just going to comment this out like so. Now, since we have deleted that bean from the XML file, in order to tell the Spring framework that what kind of bean we want, we make use of annotation. So for example, if we want the object of car, we go to car and here we can specify some annotation, which is component from Spring framework stereotype. So what it does is, whenever we annotate any class with component annotation, Spring Container internally will create a bean of that class. For example, here we have annotated this car class with component annotation. So the Spring Container will create a bean of this car class. And in our main application, what we can do, here I can simply say car. So let's just run this and see what happens. We got an error. Let's see what does it say. It says no bean named car. Now, if we have guessed it correctly, when we have mentioned the car bean, it will go to configuration.xml file. In configuration.xml, since we have not provided any information that we want a bean of car or bike or whatever, this will give us an error. So now, in order to inform the Spring framework that we want a bean of car, that we have mentioned at the rate component over here. So what we shall do, from here, we should give the information to Spring framework that there is a class over there which has an annotation of component. So you need to return a bean of that class. So how we can do that? We can specify that in a tag called context :component scan. And in this we need to pass the package name, which is org.example. So what we are doing in here is, we are asking the Spring framework to scan all the components which are present in the base package. So in this package, the Spring will scan all the classes and will create the bean of those classes which has at the rate component annotation. Alright, let's now run this. We got an output. Now notice over here that I have mentioned the car with a small c, although the car name is with a capital C. So how it works is, whenever it creates a bean of any class, it will create a bean of that class with the same name. Instead, the first letter will be small. So the bean name that Spring Container will create is car with a small c. Alright. So that's what I have mentioned over here. If we had mentioned capital C, it will give us a bean not found exception. Alright. And now if we want a bike object, we can simply say bike, and in the bike class also, we need to mention the annotation which is at the rate component. Let's run this class. Yeah, we got the output as bike engine. So this is how we do annotation-based configurations using at the rate component annotation. So just a recap, what we did is, we did not change anything in our application file. What we changed is, in our XML configuration file, instead of creating the bean here itself, we are asking the Spring Framework to scan all the components which are present in this package. So what Spring Framework will do? It will go to this package and scan all the classes and create the beans of those classes which has @component annotation present. As soon as it finds any classes, it will create the bean and will return to this object.